What's up, everybody? How's it going? So I paired up with my good friend and fellow ex-Google software engineer, the one and only tech lead, to talk about the most common myths that we've heard about FANG software engineers. Now, this was a pretty long video, so we decided to split it into two parts. You're watching one of the parts here on this channel, and the other part is on Tech Lead's channel. I'll put the link in the description down below and in the comments below. Be sure to check it out. And also, Tech Lead is a pretty small YouTuber, so let's show him some love, give him some subscribers. And with that said, let's dive into it. Enjoy.
I think the other interesting thing is that machine learning is powering so much of modern algorithms these days that if there's any product that's really successful, the algorithms portion is probably being handled by like the machine learning team. And then what you're doing maybe, and what most other people are doing, is just wiring that up, setting up buttons, UI, click handlers.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that sometimes the most exciting part of a product is actually just, a fairly small facet of it, and it's handled by a small team, and you're just not going to be on that team. However, I do want to add here that this actually leads to another myth, which is that a lot of people think that if you don't work on that super exciting product, then you must have like a very, bad job, or it must not be fun. And that's not true. Sometimes the most rewarding teams are the ones that work on, let's say, the settings page, just because you've got good teammates, a good manager. So it's not always about the super sexy product.
All right, so we all have this image about computer programmers. They only care about coding and they're just hacking all night, all day in their basements. Is that really what they're like?
So no, that's not what they're like. I think that these FANG companies tend to have such a diverse body of employees and engineers, and you often actually are surprised because you see that all these engineers, they are not at all the stereotype that you just described. They have very diverse interests, very unique hobbies. I think, if anything, the one common thread is that FANG engineers tend to be, kind of high-achieving people and very goal-oriented people. And so oftentimes you'll see that FANG engineers really excel in some sort of other hobby or, interest. Like, for instance, maybe they're super well-traveled. They've traveled the world, 25 plus countries. Or maybe they are at the top of their field in some other thing. They're like a gold medalist in astronomy Olympiad, or maybe they are the best marathoner, they're really into marathons.
It's interesting for me. I have this background where I was fairly successful early on, and I spent a number of years being a digital nomad, traveling the world. And I was afraid to tell people about the story, but then when I got into Google, I noticed a number of my other colleagues had actually done very similar things, and I could just be more myself and talk about the trips that I had done and the background. And there were people who would be far more successful than me as well. So I think it's interesting that at some companies like FANG, you see people who are successful in many parts of their lives.
Right.
And they don't limit themselves to only being good at just coding, and that's the only one skill that they have. They try to improve themselves on many areas. And I think the other interesting thing is a lot of these people go to the gym as well, right? And they understand the importance of health, and they're keeping that in good shape as well.
Yeah, oftentimes you just see people like I was saying earlier, the common thread is people tend to optimize. They want to optimize their lives. So they make sure that their health is in check, that their mental health is in check, that everything is sort of, that their happiness is in check, so to spek. Okay, so let me ask you something, Tech Lead. If right now I ask you to tell me everything you know about TensorFlow, Firebase, React, RxJS, and Swift UI, do you know all of this?
No, I'm super outdated, and that's what happens as you work in a FANG company, right? A lot of these companies, they're on very old tech stacks. And for example, Objective-C is still being used at a lot of FANG companies, right? Because a lot of these companies, they didn't take the time to migrate over to Swift. And much of the time, you're not using the latest and greatest tech that was just invented and released. Companies just have a ton of code still on legacy systems, and they haven't taken the time to migrate that. Or it could even be proprietary systems, right? So instead of using the latest React.js stuff, instead one of these companies may just be using some much older, much proprietary framework.
Yeah, and I think the idea also is that the engineers at these companies, probably because of what you just described, don't necessarily stay up to date with all this latest tech.
Some people will do it, but there's no immediate practical usage of that, and people are busy enough as they are, such that you sometimes find engineers and they just get outdated over time. And it's surprising if I find a colleague and ask them if they know about, say, Redux or something, right? In JavaScript, that's a new framework. Some people don't really know about that and they don't keep up to date.
Right. But I think the one caveat there is that most FANG engineers would be able to pick these things up pretty fast if you told them you kind of have to, right? That's what makes them probably very capable. You told me something earlier about tooling and a myth that you had heard there. What was it?
Yeah, so it's the idea that, at least as an undergrad, I know that some students will think that you have to be very specific about tooling, like Emacs, Vim, Unix, Bash shells, making sure you're using Linux. But in reality, I don't think real programmers care so much about these tools. And they're using tools very different than these that you may think that people are using.
And I think that it really comes down to the individual at the end of the day. Yes, I have met people at FANG companies who are, Vim experts, and they say that they will never use anything other than Vim. But I would say that a lot of them aren't like that. And like you said, sometimes you end up just using proprietary tech, and so you don't even have the option to use Vim or Emacs or what have you.
You have to remember, a lot of these companies, they can hire people to create their own proprietary in-house editors that are perfectly synchronized to their code bases and tools. Right. And that's just going to be a far more powerful editor. You may be finding that once you get into a company, there's a whole bunch of tools that are not public that is far better than what's out there. You think that Unix is good. Inside a company like Google, maybe they already have Unix version 2 or version 3 out that everybody's using.
Right. So I think that the takeaway there is, if you are looking at, getting into a FANG company, for instance, don't get necessarily too bogged down by the idea that, I need to be a Vim expert or whatever. The tooling or choose to use is probably going to become increasingly less important once you're in the company. The last myth that I kind of want to address here, which is that just because you're a FANG engineer does not mean that you have the perfect job, the perfect life, the perfect everything. I think that, yes, working at a FANG company is oftentimes amazing. You learn and grow as an engineer and as a person, but it is a job. You are in big companies. There are things that aren't great about working at a big company, and people should not think that, FANG engineers have perfect lives.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's a job, right? You go in at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. and then you come back, you do your 9 to 5.
Or 11 a.m.
Yeah. There's some perks about it, but it's not so much different than a standard job like any other normal job, right? For example, I would say that a lot of the startups come pretty close. FANG companies, they're big, and that's one thing about them is, right, they're usually operating at a bigger scale, but in terms of the day-to-day life, it's pretty similar. And
I think that while the perks that these FANG companies offer are sometimes a bit in a league of their own, at the end of the day, there have even been studies about this, that what matters the most for employees to be happy is sort of having a good team, working on something that you feel sort of passionate about, not even passionate, but you're happy, you feel like you're working towards a common goal and vision. And that, you can find that at other companies.
Yeah, in fact, at smaller companies, you may have a better chance for promotion. There may be actually better offsites. There may be better food just because they don't have to pay for thousands of people.
Right. Or a better, vision or product or something that you're more, excited about. So I think at the end of the day, what this comes down to, right? Don't believe everything you hear about FANG companies and FANG engineers. Hopefully what we said today will help debunk some of the most popular myths about FANG engineers or around FANG engineers. And if you have any others that you're wondering whether or not they're true, leave them in the comments below and we'll try to answer. All right, thanks for being here, Tech Lead.
Yeah, it's my place after all.
Indeed. I'll see you in the next one.
See you.
All right, if you made it to the end of this video, I really hope that you enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought about all these myths in the comments down below. I really try to answer most of them. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. I'm posting 3 times a week. You don't want to miss any of that content. Turn on the notification bell to know when I'm posting stuff. And am I missing anything else? I think I might be missing something else. Oh, right, it rhymes with hike, starts with an L. That's right, smash the like button.